So why is the Prime Minister silent on key issues? Does he have to have a different avatar once he's in power? Is it more responsible for him to be this way, or does he need to be more effective in his communication? Also, is this government looking a lot like UPA 2 and some calling it now UPA 3? Joining us tonight, BJP spokesperson Nalin Kohli, Lok Sabha MP and spokesperson of the Congress Shashi Tharoor. Also with us tonight, Chetan Bhagat, author and columnist, Gaurav Bhatia from the Samajwadi Party, and journalist and columnist Akar Patel. I'll take this question first to Shashi Tharoor because Shashi Tharoor, you wrote a piece, in fact, on our website ndtv.com, essentially saying that Mr. Modi was missing an opportunity by not effectively communicating today on a series of issues that we've seen that have hit headlines. Could you elaborate on that? Why do you say it's a missed opportunity?
Well, first of all, there is a general problem which your earlier dispatch has already identified of an uncommunicative Prime Minister, so much so that people wanting you to switch off your cell phones are now saying, please put your cell phones on Narendra Modi mode. But that apart, there is a specific opportunity that the Prime Minister has failed to take. And that opportunity, I'm sorry to say, relates to the series of incidents in recent days and weeks that have affected and troubled our Muslim minority. And in the context of a historical background in which the Prime Minister has a particular challenge in winning over the trust of that community, here was an opportunity for him to speak up and send a signal of reassurance to that community that he and his party in government do not have any agenda that should make minorities uncomfortable. Instead, his silence has merely either allowed some people to believe that he condones some of these excesses, ranging from the murder of the Pune techie to the chapati stuffing down the throat incident in Maharashtra Southern, and other incidents in between, the statements made in Goa about Modi ji converting India into a Hindu nation. All of these things have created an atmosphere in which many Muslim Indians and liberal Indians generally feel that a reassurance or a signal, a direct, oral, clear, unambiguous signal from the Prime Minister has been overdue. So the silence as a general issue is a problem. The failure to break that silence when an opportunity has presented itself to convey a reassurance to 16% of India's people and to the larger worried population, that is even more.
Okay, so you're particularly citing the concerns of minorities. I want to take this to Nalin Kohli because Pratap Bhanu Mehta also wrote a column yesterday where he said that Mr. Modi has failed to draw clear red lines on what his party men can and cannot say. He's also said you can't expect a Prime Minister to comment on every matter, but there are certain issues on which he has to draw the lines on what the public narrative should be. And some of those examples have already been cited by Shashi Tharoor. Your response to that?
Well, I have multiple things to say. If you recall Mr. Modi as Chief Minister of Gujarat, you really didn't hear him speak on party matters. If you are comparing it with a campaign trail, I'm sure it's not the first time on a campaign trail you see any leader across the world who is speaking on a day-to-day basis, addressing hundreds of rallies over a period of a few months, keeping the same thing going when they come into office or if they don't come into office. So I think you can't make the comparison. They are two different events. The third part is about Mr. Modi not communicating. He is communicating in short bits. You see it coming out, whether it's through press releases at times, mostly through Twitter. And when he addresses, for example, yesterday at the ICAR. The next point is your opportunity about minorities.
That's what Manmohan Singh also did.
Not about Twitter so much, but yes, to a lesser extent.
You had a
but
PMO,
you had it, yes, sure enough.
PMO but it's handle, and you had the Prime Minister then, addressing different gatherings. So that's how we got those, yeah.
I'm only adding here, in about 60, 70, 80 days, there seems to be this great expectation that everything should be their way. He will be communicating to the nation from time to time. One event is just around the corner, 15th of August. And I've written about that. The other thing I'd like to say is about the question that's being raised, Muslim techie in Pune, XYZ. And I have a concern, a serious concern, about the way we are consistently, and sections of the media, as also political parties, raising questions. When a person dies in Pune, he's a human being who dies first, then an Indian, and finally he's a Muslim techie.
Well, so he was killed because he was Muslim.
He
was killed because he was Muslim, because he was wearing a skull cap.
Hear me out, Mr. Tharoor. I'm just making a point.
Yeah.
Not by the BJP, by some lumpen elements.
Of course.
And of course, those lumpen elements should have been reined in earlier. Nobody is saying
absolutely,
that we were saying,
which was a failure of the state government as much as anyone else.
Therefore, to make this assumption that it is the BJP or the BJP mindset is really unfair. But the larger point I'm making, I don't like this looking at every incident of violence or crime through a communal mindset, which is Muslim or Hindu. So are we going to say Shakti Mills rapists are this community and therefore rapes are? This is ridiculous.
No, no.
I think we need to
when
stop
the
this
Deputy
kind of
Chief
community.
Minister of Goa says that Modi
Yes,
will
of
make
course.
India Hindu Rashtra.
He came out and apologized for it later.
No, no. So
let me just make a clear
when
point.
he says that, when you have a BJP leader who says that Sania Mirza is Pakistan's daughter-in-law, when you have
Which
the
was
incident,
condemned by 2 ministers in the government.
but why doesn't
No,
the
but
Prime
hold
Minister
on.
say something?
Just wait. No, I mean, I'm sorry to say, by the same no,
you
I'm
draw
sorry.
the red lines and say
draw
this
the red
is not
lines.
on.
When 2
Tell
ministers of the
tell
government...
the loonies it's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
Nidhi. When 2 ministers of a government that has collective responsibility speak, it is not in their individual capacity. It's of the government of India's representative. And you don't need to necessarily, I will say this
Then
on
why
the
did you
record,
criticize
we haven't
Manmohan
seen
Singh?
Mrs. Gandhi speak on such occasions repeatedly.
No, no. So
As
why
a
did
party
you
leader for the
criticize
party,
Manmohan Singh?
As Manmohan Singh. My point is, the party will be taken on by the party, not the Prime Minister. We are not going to confuse these two issues. The party is in its right to deal
Okay,
with how
Shashi
it
Tharoor
May
has
I
a
just
with
rebuttal.
regard to Mr. Narendra Modi, I don't think Mr. Tharoor should really be very impatient about it. He will hear Mr. Modi speak and many more times than we've seen it in UP.
But on Mr. Modi's terms. Yes, Shashi
Well,
Tharoor.
why not?
Yeah, but no, I just want to say Nalin made 2 substantive points that I do believe require rebuttal. The first is that in every democracy, there is a big difference between campaign communication and leadership communication. Now, that sounds reasonable, but in practice, when you have been a distinctively oratorically endowed communicator, as Barack Obama was and as Modi has been, you are going to be judged by that standard. So, for example, when there is a shooting in a school in America, a school where obviously no one is accusing Obama of having anything to do with the people who did the shooting, he nonetheless makes a statement as a leader of the nation about the significance of that event, expressing sympathies to the ones who've lost their lives, talking about the gun culture, etc. We have not seen the equivalent. When the Pune techie was killed, Modi ji could have made a statement talking about how wrong this was, deploring the culture that has created this kind of hatred, whatever, and assuring the nation that as Prime Minister he cares about the life of an innocent person killed merely because his religion was visible in the way he looked. Modi missed the opportunity. The second point Nalin made was that we shouldn't communalize everything by only focusing on minorities. My point is there is a particular context that Nalin surely is not going to be disingenuous enough to forget. There is a context of mistrust that has been caused by certain historical events in Mr. Modi's own past that makes it incumbent upon him particularly to address the concerns of this community. Mr. Manmohan Singh might not have had the same degree of obligation as Mr. Modi does, and in his own interest, he could have dispelled the mistrust, dispelled the concerns by seizing the opportunity. Instead, by ignoring the opportunity, he simply gives a field day to those who say,
one
see,
thing,
this is the kind
I'll
of
come
thing
back
that
to
really
Nalin.
they want to have happen.
But I
Akar
would like
Patel,
to rebut
I will. Akar, is the problem really that, you had a Prime Minister earlier, and I come back to this, that was always criticized for his silence, for not speaking on any issue. And the expectation from Narendra Modi was very different, that he would be much more communicative, and right now it is restricted to press releases and information that the government wants to put out there. There's really no interactive communication even with the press, for instance.
I think the examples you stated placed Mr. Modi in a particular light, Sania Mirza and the man being forced to eat. You are talking of a man, Mr. Modi, who did not offer comment when his minister was convicted and jailed for the murder of 95 Gujaratis. He has not yet commented on that. To expect him to comment on such minor things, and I think that these are minor things. It was one man who said something about Sania Mirza. It was one man. The Shiv Sena is known to do things like this, known to commit mischief like this. I don't think it was a big enough event for the Prime Minister to have made a comment. I think Manmohan Singh was right in keeping as silent as he did over the last 10 years. I think Mr. Modi is right to have kept his silence for the most part. We will hear from him when he decides he needs to tell us something. I think this has been his style in Gujarat for the last 13 years. He sees the press in adversarial terms. Media ka kaam Modi ko nicha dikhana hai. This is what he told his interviewer Madhu Kishwar. He genuinely believes this, that the media is out to get him. He will speak to it or he will speak over it. I think Twitter and Facebook have given him the opportunity to communicate directly with the people that matter to him most, and he does that really well. The last thing is that on the specific subjects that you named, he has both a constituency obligation and a belief that perhaps what happened wasn't entirely wrong. And I think his record, both in the RSS, through his writings, which I have translated, and as the Chief Minister of Gujarat, demonstrate this. I don't think he's going to go out of his way to tell the world or to tell Indians that what happened was wrong.
Nalin Kohli wants to
I
respond
just
immediately.
want to say, I do not find anything exceptional in what, say, Mr. Tharoor is saying. That's the line we've been hearing from the Congress party for the last 10 years. That Mr. Modi would like to follow, say, Barack Obama's style. I think that choice we should leave it to Mr. Modi rather than have a suggestion come from Mr. Tharoor. I'm sure he appreciates that too. But let's get back to the other point. That in terms of, the style of painting Mr. Modi, he has been at the receiving end of a tyranny of, litigation, of also comments, and of the most abusive in terms of, raising questions that he himself was personally responsible. He has chosen to let his work speak for himself, and that is how I think we should expect to see Mr. Modi. If the minorities want reassurance, they have to only just go back to what he said just as he was assuming office and after he assumed office. And I think that's what is the substantive message. People are not willing to hear what he said, which was probably surprising. He spoke of the example of a cycle repair person and said, should a Muslim person whose son also continue in the same way? Is this how
You're
we want to
saying he
say?
doesn't need to repeat that again and again.
He's sent, and he's a man who will be judged for his deeds. He's not going to be there looking for, brownie points based on a set of people who would like to hear it and say, oh, does he belong to the club? He is not here to belong to any club.
That's an interesting point. Gaurav Bhatia, why does the Prime Minister have to repeat again and again that, Muslims are a part of this country, minorities should feel safe? I mean, is that a little unfair to expect him to make a comment on every incident that happens?
Nidhi, first of all, let us remember the BJP slogan by which they went to elections. It was Ab Ki Baar Modi Sarkar. It was not Ab Ki Baar BJP Sarkar. There was a person who was in the front of everything, making speeches and making promises. And after he's been sworn in as the Prime Minister, he's followed the Manmohan Singh's path. He's been silent.